Green doll hairs. It's a good thing I saved up for a year. So if you couldn't tell, today's video is on money, moolah, dinero, George Washington's, aka the green, show me the money. Now obviously this is absolutely everything that I'm worth, because how else would I afford to go on a 4 to 6 month trip while not working? It's easy. You come up with it, and 5 minutes later you decide you're going to do it, and then just magically all this money appears. No, but seriously, this has been a long time coming, and obviously this is not all the cash that I'll be taking. Now it is a large chunk. Kidding. It is not even any of the money that I've saved for it. It's just what I had laying around. But I'm sure you're wondering, Joe, how do you plan to afford all of this? Glad you asked. Before we get into the nuts and bolts of my actual plan budget for my through hike finance, it's important that we just don't jump to the actual ones and twos of it all. Now, I am not an expert in through hike finances by any means, because I've never done a hike like the PCT, but I am kind of a bit of a budget nerd. Yes, but before we even get to that, there's a few things you need to do before we even consider getting into a through hike finances, and I would recommend this man right here. It's pretty self-explanatory, but there's a couple key things you got to do, and a couple key things that I did before I even determined, hey, I can do a through hike. Your initial reaction is going to be, say, Joe, you're an idiot. You don't know what the freak you're talking about. And you're definitely right. But the one thing I do want to say is that I work in finance. It's kind of my life. I'm a CPA. I can be a bit of a nerd. Now, that doesn't make me a financial advisor by any stretch, but I'm coherent in the field to a degree. I'm not saying that you need to be an expert in Dave Ramsey to be able to through hike, but he offers very sound advice. Now, he has baby steps, and I won't go through all of them, but I'll go through the ones that you should probably have nailed down before you even consider doing a through hike. And this is just sound advice for anything. You should have this taken care of if you want to be financially sound. But number one, save $1,000 as an emergency starter fund. You should at least have that. Now, that means that you need to also have baby step number 2. Start the debt snowball. Pay all your debts off, excluding your mortgage, from smallest to largest. That means you start with the lowest one, and then you pay it off, and you keep accruing that and throwing the money that you were throwing at the smaller ones to the higher ones, excluding your minimum. You also want to pay your minimum balances too. I won't go through all these because he goes into them. It's all free out there too. And then number 3 is finish the emergency fund. And you want to save 3 to 6 months of expenses, not income. A little backstory. The first time that I applied for the PCT was 2-3 years ago. And I knew in the back of my mind that I probably wasn't going to be able to do it because I didn't have this step finished. I do have this step finished now. And I feel very comfortable because this is separate from my hiking money. This is if shit hits the fan and I really just need it. There are additional steps, and that's onto wealth building. Now, obviously, since I do have money in my 401k, but I'm not touching that at all. But I won't get into the wealth building. If you want to look more, Dave Ramsey, Google him. On great number of books. He also has a radio show. I highly recommend him. Give him a look. Cool. Now we're into the actual budgeting things. This is less a life lesson initially. This is less a lesson initially in trail budgeting, but this is what I do every time I get paid. So I get paid every other week, and I update all of this. Now this is my own schedule I put together. At the top, you will see that I have credit cards, which I no longer use. The only one I still use is an Amex one or an Amazon one, and then Amex. And that Amex I only use because I traveled a lot and I like the lounge access. But my sage advice to anyone is do not have any credit cards. Now, I know I'm a hypocrite because I do have them, but the only one I really use is the Amazon one, and I should probably get rid of that as well. Number 2 is I track my balances in all my bank accounts. I have removed all money, and then I track my 401k, and I removed all balances just so you numbskulls can't get a full view of all of my finances. Now, I also had my car balance here. I did pay that off, and that was part of the prerequisite for me being able to do the PCT, was making sure that I had no debt. I have no mortgage. I rent. My lease will end 2 weeks before I before I commence the PCT. So basically, my expenses are minimal. The other thing that I do on the regular basis, and what I have utilized here, is I have my monthly budget here. Now, I did not take out all the balances here, but this is my monthly budget. Now, I went through and I said which ones stay and which one are gonna go. And as you can see, many of them are going away. Some of them are staying. The ones that are staying are my phone bill. I realized recently that I have an iPhone payment that kept sneaking through. Car insurance is going to be reduced. I have a gym membership that I'm putting on hold. Google Play Music, Pandora is already paid. Apple, medicine. And then let's see here. Oh, the key things that have to be added. Storage unit. I'm going to need to store all the stuff that's in my apartment. And Cobra. What a big one. Now, Cobra is the one that's probably going to surprise a lot of people at how much it costs, just because your employer tends to pay between 20 or 75 or lower of your actual cost. So that's one you're going to want to look into. So some employers will give you, at least mine does, gives you the ability to see what your Cobra coverage would be if you were to leave. And that's good because there's a 2% fee on top of everything that you would need to pay in addition. So that's a big one you're going to want to look at. That's probably my biggest recurring expense. That's going to be a fun one. And the other thing, I know I could be recording this on my screen. My goal with this, whatever I'm doing on YouTube here, is to make it as low budget as possible. I want to do as much of it on my phone. I'm doing it all on my phone. I'm not doing anything additional because that just seems like a lot of extra work, and I want to keep this low budget, low production value. That's my goal, is to make this the worst possible quality. No, I'm kidding. To make this to make this decent quality while reducing the amount of additional work I have to do. All right, so out here for 6 months, that is my out-of-pocket before I even touch the trail. Good thing I have that saved already. Now we get down to the nitty-gritty. So I used a couple examples from Reddit that I could find to compare what my expenses would be. So that I used a high and a low, and then this is what my estimates are going to be. So food resupply. So I'm going to resupply from the trail, mainly through grocery stores, and I'll mail myself stuff. Now, the way I got to this number is I used this to a degree, and I used this to a degree. And whenever I'm budgeting, I always go high, and that's how I budget each month, because I'd much rather prepare for worst case scenario rather than best case scenario, and then not have enough projected to have myself saved for. So over here, the way I calculated how much I think I'm gonna need for food, and I think these are high. I'm not trying to do these, and you'll see what I'm actually estimating. But off to the side here, each month I budget how much I'm going to actually spend, or it's actually how much I spend on groceries and restaurants, because since I don't use credit cards, I only use cash and my debit card. So if I spend too much, then there's nothing left, because I've moved most of my money to savings for the trail and for normal emergencies. So each month I budgeted that I was going to spend $200 in restaurants and bars, and this is normal outside the trail, $400 for groceries, and $220 for lunch. The one thing I do want to point out is that I started reducing my costs probably about a year ago to really see, all right, I wanted to maximize my savings, not just for trail expenses, but I wanted to start building money off to the side and maximizing my 401k contributions. So these are really low as compared to where they used to be. But as you can see, at 6 months, my food was coming to about $5,000. Now over here, I compare that there, and we're looking at 4,500. So that's pretty spot on if I'm doing the high end of things, because there's no way I'm going to spend what I do when I'm at home, because I'm buying fresh produce all the time, and I'm buying a lot more quantities because it just kind of sits around. Then Reddit had these guys and then these guys. This was understandably the low end. The one thing that I'm having a little more trouble budgeting for, because I just don't know what I don't know, is hotels and hostels. So I'm budgeting 13. They said 16. They said 500. Gear, this is not shoes. These two do include shoes, but I'm going high. So I'm saying, let's say something, because some of my gear is a little older, and it's like the Z-Pax Duplex. I've had that probably for 3 years now, and I've put quite a bit of miles on it, as well as my SWD backpack. So quite a few miles there, just preparing for a worst case scenario. Shoes, this is estimate at, if I'm buying Lone Peaks, they average about $120 a pair. I'm assuming I'll need 5. Now I'm not buying them beforehand, I'm going to buy them from trail. So there's that. And then mail, this is another one where I'm not really sure of. So sending resupply boxes, or sending gear, sending ahead resupply boxes, since I'll be resupplying from the trail. And then they were saying $450. And then this one, I think it was baked into other. And then this person had $350 since they were traveling from pretty far. They budgeted $1,150 for travel. And I'm budgeting $600 for flying out and flying back from the East Coast to San Diego. And then if I factor in, so total budgeted on trail expenses, if I'm using these, is $8,000. And then this person, and this is including travel, was $8,300, and then this person was $4,800. And then for a total, this is if I were to use this person's budget plus my standard monthly expenses and this person's budget. So we're looking at just south of 15,000, just north of 15,000, and then right under 12,000. Now I don't expect to spend anywhere near these numbers. So next here, I don't want to just have a number and then go like a bulk number and go from there. I want to budget by a week. And because right now in everyday life, I'm budgeting bi-weekly. So I budget for 2 weeks at a time, but I do budget for the month, but then I break it down for each paycheck, which is bi-weekly. So I'm going to try to do similar things like that since I'm used to that. But let's go down here. So using the data from the 2019 half-mile survey, average amount spent on the entirety of a through hike was $6,500. This is just these expenses here. This isn't for my monthly outside of through hike costs. So they're saying on trail expenses average 65. So amount spent per day was $38.68, and average spent on gear prior to, which I'm not including because I have all my gear already. So forget about that number. But then we have to factor in the number of days it takes too. So the average completion for the northbound through hikers was 155 days, and the average number for all days, average number of days for both northbound and southbound, if you average them out, was 152. So what does that all mean, Joe? Okay, so that means if I factor in how much it costs per day on average by the number of days, they're saying it costs right at pretty much $6,000 a month, or $6,000 total for on-trail expenses. So that's about $1,000 a month, which is right where I think I need to be. Now, like I said, I wanted to calculate what would that be for a week. So I took the 38.68 per day average and then times 7. So you get 270.76 per week is what they were saying they spent on average per week. You're saying, Joe, that's a lot of good information, but what the hell does it mean? Speak my language. So then I came up with what's my target? So let's go here. My target based on the average from the Half Mile Anywhere survey. I'd like to be higher than the average to account for unforeseen costs. So as I said earlier, I like to be higher when I'm budgeting just to make sure that I'm accounting for things. So if I spend less in a week, that just stays in the kitty. If I spend more, it gets deducted from the next week. So I'm saying I'm gonna try to shoot for $300 per week for all expenses, not just food, for lodging, transportation, blah, 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 blah. And then daily average. So if I take the 300 and I divide it by 7, that comes to $42.86 a day. And then if I complete on average, on the same average as everyone else last year at 155 days, that we take the 42.86 times 155, and that is for a total of $6,600 for on-trail expenses, which is good because that's just above, that's about $650 more than what everyone averaged last year, which is where I actually kind of right where I need to be in my head. And then just a little number here just to figure out how much it costs. So if you factor this by, and you divide it by the number of miles on the PCT, so 2560 is $260 per mile. So I know that was a lot of information, but as you can see, what I'm shooting for is that to save for, or what I am on track to save for on-trail expenses, but I would like to keep it there. And the reason that is because I would like to have some cushion just in case something happens, like say I get hurt and I need to go to the doctors or something like that. Even though I have insurance, there's going to be costs with that. So I want to have some buffer, and say I get hurt, or say I'm feeling like shit and I need to take a couple zeros. I'd like to have some padding in there to make sure. Now, I would like to spend much less than that, and that will be the goal. I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good budget wise. I keep myself fairly honest, and that's why I broke it down this way. What else? Oh, the other thing we can look at here. I was initially gonna show how much I was actually saving per week, but I can foresee that playing out poorly and being received poorly as well, because I didn't want it to be look at like, oh, look how much I'm saving. You should save this number. No, the numbers aren't important. It's saving what you can. So what I'm showing you here is how anal I am. So whenever I'm saving for anything, the first thing I do is I go, where do I start? So what you're not seeing here is my starting point. And then I set up a separate savings account for whatever I'm saving for. And then that doesn't get touched unless I'm using it for whatever I'm saving for. So then I laid out the pay schedule here. So the green is every pay date. So what I'll do over here is I'll lay out a variety of scenarios. So let's say the starting point's the same for all of them. Then what I need to do down here is I put, okay, so my enter date, my PCT start date is May 10th. So then what I do here is I put what I need to hit. So we'll have our starting point and our ending point. And then the way you come into what you need to save each week is you say, here's what I need to do this week, here's what I need to do this week, here's what I need to do this week to get to your ultimate end goal. And that's how I built how I'm saving. So right now I don't have the amount I need saved specific for the PCT. But by the time I get here, I'll have what I need saved and then some, because like I told you before, the goal is to make sure that I have this number saved. So while I will hope I never need to spend that amount of money, that's what I'm shooting to have saved for the PCT. Hopefully you all found this interesting and useful in some way, shape, or form. This was in no way was me trying to say you need to have this amount saved, because I don't even know if that number is actually what I need to have saved. I know it mathematically and theoretically makes sense, but I've never hiked the PCT. I've never done a long hike like this before. So this is my best attempt using the process and the methodology I've used in the past for just normal budgeting to get to the point I need to get to, and using the information that others made available to me. So that's why I used the half mile, because I wanted to make sure that I wasn't just going out there and throwing shit at a wall and see what sticks. I wanted to make sure that I had some baseline based on past people's experience. But anyway, I hope you found that interesting. Please don't get too mad at me, because I know finances are usually a very touchy subject. The reason I'm sharing this is because it's usually a very hard subject to come across, especially for the PCT. The number that you don't see a lot of people talk about is this number up here. The number for the expenses that aren't trail related. You see a lot of people talk about these numbers, but the number up here is the one you don't really see people talking about. And that's the number that I've been trying to get low for a while now. And the other reason I'm talking about this is because I want other people to offer me feedback in case there's things I'm missing. And also, the other reason too is because there's a lot of good information here and a lot of good resources. So let me know what you think. Let me know if I missed anything. Let me know if you hate me. I hope you don't. But if you do, well, we'll work it out. All right. Talk to you later. Toodles.